God is Love. Cain and Abel, Part 7, Epilogue. Notwithstanding that Cain had by his crimes merited the sentence of death, a merciful Creator spared his life and granted him opportunity for repentance. But Cain lived only to harden his heart, to encourage rebellion against the divine authority, and to become the head of a line of bold, abandoned sinners. This one apostate, led by Satan, became a tempter to others, and his example and influence exerted their demoralizing power until the earth became so corrupt and filled with violence as to call for its destruction. In sparing the life of the first murderer, God presented before the whole universe a lesson bearing upon the great controversy. The dark history of Cain and his descendants was an illustration of what would have been the result of permitting the sinner to live on forever, to carry out his rebellion against God. The forbearance of God only rendered the wicked more bold and defiant in their iniquity. For 15 centuries after the sentence pronounced upon Cain, the universe witnessed the fruition of Cain's influence and example in the crime and pollution that flooded the earth. It was made manifest that the sentence of death pronounced upon the fallen race for the transgression of God's law was both just and merciful. The longer men lived in sin, the more abandoned they became, the divine sentence cutting short a career of unbridled iniquity and freeing the world from the influence of those who had become hardened in rebellion was a blessing rather than a curse. Satan is constantly at work, with intense energy and under 1,000 disguises, to misrepresent the character and government of God. With extensive, well-organized plans and marvelous power, Satan is working to hold the inhabitants of the world under his deceptions. God, the one infinite and all-wise, sees the end from the beginning, and in dealing with evil, his plans are far-reaching and comprehensive. It was God's purpose not merely to put down the rebellion, but to demonstrate to all the universe the nature of the rebellion. God's plan is ever unfolding, showing both his justice and his mercy, and fully vindicating his wisdom and righteousness in his dealing with evil. The holy inhabitants of other worlds were watching with the deepest interest the events taking place on the earth. In the condition of the world that existed before the flood, they saw illustrated the results of the administration which Lucifer had endeavored to establish in heaven, in rejecting the authority of Christ and casting aside the law of God. In those high-handed sinners of the antediluvian world, they saw the subjects over whom Satan held sway. The thoughts of men's hearts were evil continually, Genesis 6:5. Every emotion, every impulse and imagination was at war with the divine principles of purity and peace and love. It was an example of the awful depravity resulting from Satan's policy to remove from God's creatures the restraints of his holy law. By the facts unfolding in the progress of the great controversy, God is demonstrating the principles of his rules of government, which have been falsified by Satan and by all whom he has deceived. God's justice will finally be acknowledged by the whole world, though the acknowledgement will be made too late to save the rebellious. God carries with him the sympathy and approval of the whole universe, as step by step his great plan advances to its complete fulfillment. He will carry with him the sympathy and approval of the whole universe in the final eradication of rebellion. It will be seen that all who have forsaken the divine precepts have placed themselves on the side of Satan in warfare against Christ. When the prince of this world shall be judged, and all who have united with him shall share his fate. The whole universe, as witnesses in the sentence, will declare, "Just and true are thy ways, thou King of saints." Revelation 15:13. Tomorrow, Seth and Enoch, Part 1.